In this video, we will be creating a SaaS application in Ruby on Rails 6. So our SaaS application will be a job board. It will allow users to sign up to a plan. So users can sign in and post jobs based on the plan that they are signed up to. For the recurring payment element in this application, we'll be using the Stripe gem. And just before I created this video, I have set up a basic Ruby on Rails 6 application, and it is using the devise gem to sign in and sign out. And I've also created a very simple static HTML markup of the job layout. So to begin with, we will be using the Stripe Ruby gem, and I'm just looking over the documentation here. So we'll be using the gem Stripe, and we'll drop that into our gem file. So the main focus of this video series will be on the recurring billing element. So we'll try not to do too much generic Rails type content. I want to focus mainly on getting a SaaS application, so getting the functionality of that SaaS application working. And that will involve setting up a Stripe account, posting data from that Stripe account back to our application, and how we do all that. So we'll continue through this, and I'm not going to over edit this video. I'm going to try and do it all mostly in real time. Now, it's been a while since I've created a Stripe integration for an application like this, so I am a little bit rusty, so it may take me a little bit longer than normal to do this. But as we go along, if we hit any issues, we will try to fix everything in real time. So I think it gives everyone a better idea of how we solve these problems as we go along. So the gem I'm looking at here is a gem I have used in the past. It's called Stripe Event, and the purpose of this is to detect Webhook data that is being sent back from Stripe. So Stripe will post the Webhook information, so whatever details Stripe has collected based on that customer, it will post them back to our application. So this gem will help us a lot in retrieving that information that's sent by Stripe. So the first thing we'll do here is drop that into our gem file, and we have just run the bundle install. So now I'm creating a new file for the Stripe configuration, and we're putting that under the config initializers folder. So in here we will have the information to set the API key for Stripe and whatever information that we need to pass in for that. So it gives an example here underneath. So we set the API key and the signing secret. So these are information that we can get within our Stripe account, and we'll do that afterwards. So let's paste this in for now. And you can see here that we are using an environment variable to store this information. So we can also paste in the template code that is here. And you'll see here that the template code is listening for a charge.failed event. And we'll do more on that afterwards, but that's something to keep in mind here. So this code will actually determine what kind of event is being passed to it. So I'm looking back at the Stripe Ruby gem. The Stripe Ruby gem is a little bit different. It's more for accessing information from your Stripe account, so querying customer information, payment information, and all of that kind of thing. So the Stripe event gem is more for listening for webhook data. So now we need to set the Stripe secret key and the signing secret. So these are environment variables, and I'm a little bit old school in how I store these environment variables. There is a new way to do this in Rails 6 using the encryption, but I still opt to use the Figaro gem, but that's entirely up to yourself how you store these keys in your local environment. When we're using the production environment, it's a bit different anyway. You will set it based on the hosting provider, but in the local environment, it's really up to yourself, whatever is more convenient and comfortable to you. But I'm going to create a Ruby file here called application, and that will be it's not a Ruby file, it's a YML file, and this will be the key value pairs that we are putting in for our configuration. So anything we put in this file will automatically be converted into an environment variable. So we can have both of these values like this, and then we will paste in the actual value from our Stripe account. So you can have multiple values here, and automatically they will be read by your application. And that is done at runtime. So if you change this file, you will need to restart your Rails server. And it's a good idea to check this into the git ignore file if you're using Git for version control. So we don't want to be sharing this in our public repositories. So in preparation for this video, I have created a dummy Stripe account. So this is for our job board application. You can see here on the top left the name of the application. And we will not be using this at all in production, but this is just to test our application when we are working on it. So if we go under the developer section, we will go under the API keys. And in here we can see we've got a publishable key. And we can copy this and paste it into our configuration file. So in this case, actually what we need here is the secret key. Click the reveal button. And even though this is a test account, I do get a little bit paranoid about these keys, so I'm going to block it out for the purpose of this video. But all you need to do is just copy and paste this into this file and save the file afterwards. And once you've saved the file, then you would restart the Rails server. So I'm going into the Webhook section under developers now in Stripe, and I'm going to add a new endpoint. So this endpoint is a public URL that Stripe will send the webhook information to. And in order to create this and get it working in our local host, I'm going to use a service called UltraHook. Now Stripe does have its own service for this now, but I have got comfortable using this one and just haven't taken the time to learn the Stripe solution yet. But UltraHook will basically receive the webhook information and send it back to your localhost address, because on Stripe you can't directly send to localhost by default. Now there is a Stripe service available that does something similar to this now, but if you follow the on-screen instructions for this, it's very simple to set up. You simply copy and paste the 2 lines of code, and the second line will install the gem for UltraHook into our application. So now we need to tell our application where we want the Stripe data to be sent to, and we can do that using this line of code that is in the Stripe event gem. So we add this to our routes file, and this is telling our application where this webhook information will be sent to. So we'll paste this into our file, and we will change the path. So I'm going to create this under a path of webhooks/Stripe. So now we can go to our terminal and run UltraHook and send the data to the path that we have just put into our routes file. And you will see now that anything that arrives at the address on the left, which is our public URL, will be forwarded to this address within our application. So that's using the gem that was installed into our application to do that. So now that that is working, we can use the URL to add into our Stripe account. So going back to the endpoint URL, now we can update this. So once you have added the URL, then we can click the Receive All Events button here at the bottom, that link. But you can also select individual events if you wanted to do that. But for our case, we will just receive all of the events at this address. So now the endpoint has been created, and underneath we can see a signing secret. Now this is important because it verifies whether the webhook information is correctly assigned from our account, so that it is going to the right location and we're receiving real data that hasn't been tampered with. So I'm copying and pasting in the signing secret, and I'm going to block it out here just in case, but basically we are just copying and pasting it in. There's nothing more needs to be done, and we save the file. And then I will restart the application just so that our environment variables are set correctly. So I've got an error here. I think maybe I forgot to install something. I'm running bundle install, and we still have unresolved dependencies. So I'm going to run bundle update to see if this fixes it. And that appears to be working this time. So I'll start the Rails server again. And I will switch back to the UltraHook tab now in my terminal. And I'm going to cancel this and run it again, this UltraHook command. Since we have changed the values for that in the file for Stripe, I just want to restart it just in case. And I've clicked on the send test webhook now, and I'm going to create a test webhook and see if it arrives in our terminal. So we'll send a charge.succeeded. And you can see here that we've got this post message coming to this address. So that appears to be working correctly. And on our Rails server logs, now we can see all of this data has appeared. So this dummy data has been sent directly from Stripe to the public URL that we were using, and it has been forwarded to our local host. So this is working correctly, and you can explore this data to see what has been sent and what is available for us to use in our application. So now back in the Stripe dashboard, I'm going to go to the products section on the left, and we're going to create a new product. So products in Stripe are referred to as subscriptions. It's a little bit confusing. I know that this used to be different when I set up subscriptions in the past, a few years back, but now they are calling them products. So we just put a name for this and a label. Now we can put anything in here right now. This is just to test this out and see how it looks. So in this case, the example is seat. So how many seats you have in the application. But it depends on what you are selling in your application or what the service is about. In this case, we could say how many jobs, for example. How many jobs can that user post? And that is based on what tier of the subscription that they select. So I'm just going to fill this in really quickly here, just really basic information, because I want to test this out a little bit more. So you can add a nickname. Now this won't be visible to customers, so it's an internal name, I guess, just for us. So you can choose between recurring quantity or metered usage. For our case, we'll be using recurring quantity. So at the start of each period of time, we will give them a new value. So in our case, how many jobs can they post each month? In this case, then we will break it into tiers, so multiple price tiers based on quantity. So that sounds like what we're looking for. So we can have multiple prices here per unit based on how many they order. So in this case, how many jobs this user wants to post per month. And we can set a price per unit or a flat fee. So I think we want to set a flat fee since we are creating different plans for that user. So they may have a small plan where they can only post 3 jobs per month, but it costs them like $9.99. And then the next tier would be up to 9 jobs, and that would be like $19. And then a bigger plan up to 10 jobs maybe, or up to 20 jobs. In this case, you can set it as unlimited, I guess, more than 9. And that will be a full price of $29. And you can add a trial period, but I don't think we need that in this case. We're going to skip the trial period. Customer subscribed to 2 units. Okay, you can test the pricing here at the bottom. That's quite cool. You can actually test the pricing to make sure that you have set it up correctly. So that looks correct based on the plan that we're trying to set up. I think that looks correct. So now we have the plan created. Our subscription plans are created. So we're not doing any pricing per job. We have a fixed price for each of the plans. So we've got some information about our plan here now. So now I'm back in the Stripe configuration file. And in here we will change these events. So right now we see a charge.failed event. It's going to clean this up a little bit. And we're going to copy it. We're going to create a charge.succeeded. Okay, so we've already got the event.data.object. That shows us what data, or that will give us the charge data for that Stripe transaction. So we can assign this to a variable. So now anytime we need to access any of these values, we can call data, so data.amount or data.billing address, etc. So there is a lot of information here being sent to us. So you can see the amount refunded. Yeah, there's a lot of information here. It's quite hard to really read it in this format and break it down. So a good option maybe to use is going to the Stripe dashboard, and in the Stripe dashboard you can actually get a more readable solution to this information they're sending. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. So if we go to our webhooks and we click on Send Test Webhook, we just pick the event that we want to send a test. In this case, we want the succeeded, and it will show you in a much cleaner format all of the data that we are getting sent to us. So in here we can look through this and retrieve the parts that are important. So we can see here that the paid is a Boolean value of true. We can also get the payment details. So there is a lot of information there, but at the moment we will just output some dummy data to see if this is working. We're going to output the amount and the description. This will output those to the server logs. We can say if data.paid, so that paid value is a Boolean value. So if the value data.paid comes back as true, then we can give them access to the account where they can post multiple jobs. So back in the terminal now, I'm going to create a new model. So we'll run Rails generate model, and this model we will call it subscription. and we will pass in a value of active until, and that would be a time date value. So this will create that column in our database migration. So now let's open up our Rails migration. So we'll go under the db migrate and open up the file. And the first thing we need to do here is fix the typo. It looks like I made a typo on the, should be a date time. That's the value of that column. And we'll also need to add a new column for the account that this subscription is attached to. We'll use the reference for that. And I think we'll also need to include a name, we'll also need to include a plan name for this. So this will be a string value. So back in the terminal, we will run the Rails db migrate command. And this will now have updated our schema file. So if we go back and open our schema file under the db folder, yeah, we can see now that we've got this subscriptions table in place. So we've also got this model that has been created, and we'll add a belongs to here for the account. So the subscription belongs to the account, and within the account model, we're going to say has one subscription. And this devise code here, we can actually put this onto one line just to tidy it up. So now I'm going over to the Bootstrap website, and here they have a lot of example code you can use for your projects. So I'm going to use the pricing page example. So this pricing page has a very basic plan layout, and I think it's enough for us to use without spending too much time coding this ourselves. So I'm going to copy and paste this markup for this page. So I'm going to open up the views folder now, and in here we're going to create a new directory for the accounts. And within here I'm going to create a new file, and this is where we will store the markup for the plans page. So we'll paste this in, this code that we copied. And we can make a few modifications here as we need. I'm just going to rename the tiers of this plan. And we can also change the pricing to match the pricing that we're going to use in our Stripe subscription. So now let's open up our routes file, and we'll create a new path for our plans page. And in our public controller, I'm going to create a new action here called plans. And we will render the view that we have just created. So once we visit this in the browser, it will look something like this. And it's very simple right now, but we can improve that as we progress through the video series. But I'm going to tweak a little bit now, just the padding at the top, and space this out a little bit. And maybe these buttons, I think we'll fix some of these buttons to make them look a little bit better. Make these green. I can say here, select. See what this looks like. It's very small right now, but yeah, we can play around with this. Choose plan, perhaps we can say. Gotta move this. We'll just have a normal sized button for this. So I'm just modifying the pricing here to match the prices that we have in Stripe. So add the 99 cents onto the end of each plan. So this is starting to look pretty good right now. So I think we can go with this. I think this is quite decent. Yeah, you can really play around with this a lot more, but I think this is good enough for us. So let's create a little bit of space here at the top to push this down the page. I'm gonna take a moment just to update these descriptions a little bit. I know I wasn't gonna do too much around the content, but just something really, really simple just to make this look the part. And it will also help us to understand how each of these plans work. So they're based on how many jobs per month. So we can match the number of jobs up with the tiers that we have set in Stripe. And I think for some of these plans, we'll make them last longer. So the jobs will last for a month, but the basic plan will just be for like 1 week or 7 days. And then the biggest plan will be unlimited jobs. And just to make this balance out on the page, I'm going to add two extra items to this list. We'll say there's no email support and there's no phone support, no help center support. And these will be scored out. So we'll have a text muted to make them gray. And yeah, so that's looking pretty good right now. Okay, so I think we're pretty good now for the plans page. That is good enough for us at this point. So what I want to do now is record 2 additional fields in our account sign up. So part of devise, we want to record additional fields for the first name and the last name. So there is some code here I'm going to use that we can just copy and paste into the application controller. We'll drop this in and we will remove some of these key values. We don't need the address at this point. We'll just keep the first name and the last name. And the code I'm adding here simply whitelists these values so that they can be stored in our accounts table. So once we submit them from the form, this code will allow them to pass through without trying to remove that information. So I have another video that is about extending devise and how to use devise in your application, and I'll drop a link to that on this video. So if you want to know more about working with devise, you should watch that video. But I've done this a few times in different applications. We're just adding additional columns to our database, and we are storing the first name and last name. So by default, our devise setup will only include the email and the password, but we want to have some information about the user that we can use later to present, to change the presentation within our application, or to use when we contact them for any reason. So we're adding these fields to the views for devise. So now we've added those 2 fields. Let's go to the sign up page. And you can see that we now have those 2 fields. So our page is looking pretty bad right now in terms of layout. We can clean it up a little bit. So here is our initial home page that we have, but the sign up page and the sign in page don't seem to follow the style in any way at all. So perhaps we can clean this up a little bit. Just a button, push it to the center, just the very basic stuff. I don't want to spend too much time cleaning up this page, but I do like to leave the applications that we create in a presentable manner once we're finished. I know that for developers, generally we don't want to focus too much on design, but for the end user, I think design is quite important. So if you are building a SaaS application, you need it to look good in order for people to pay for your service and to use your application. So just a little bit of effort sometimes can go a long way. In this case, we're just adding a little bit of markup to wrap around this yield command. So everything in that yield command underneath will output the partials and the views that we are using in our application. So I'm going to just push that into the middle here. So we're wrapping it in a Bootstrap container. I used Bootstrap in this just as a shortcut to get some basic design and structure to our application. You can use one of the other alternatives too, but yeah, it's just something really simple to make this look good. So now the alignment's fixed. Perhaps we can make the title a little bit smaller and just add the classes to each of these fields to style them nicely, and the same for the button. Now, if you don't want to see me do this stuff, you can fast forward a couple of minutes and you should get past this and get back into the code itself. But just a quick tidy up, I think, is good to leave this looking much better. So while I'm taking a few minutes to improve the style of this page, I just want to remind you guys, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure to do that and hit the notification bell. I am creating a lot of Ruby on Rails content, and I really like focusing on building full applications rather than just creating small short videos. So if you like to watch me build applications and have ideas for videos that we can build on the channel, make sure to sign up and get notified when new videos are out. And if you are new to Ruby on Rails, I also have a course on my website. So I actually have two courses at the moment, one for Ruby, the language, and a different course for Ruby on Rails. And those are aimed at beginners. And I think it's a really good way to just learn a lot of information quite quickly. And since most of the videos I put on YouTube are quite advanced in terms of building full applications, the courses are aimed at all the small things that you need to learn to build yourself up to that. So if that's something that interests you, I will drop links in the description beneath this video, so do check that out. So now we have these fields with the rounded borders spaced out much better, but this makes the form a little bit slimmer, make it maybe like half the page, and add a green button for the sign up. So the title of the page is looking pretty big right now, sign up title. Let's try to make this a little bit smaller so that it's not just right in your face so much. So we'll add a class to this. Actually, we can change this to a paragraph tag and add a class. So we'll give it a h4 class. So we'll still have that headline look, but it will make the text a bit smaller. And now we'll just add a class onto this button. So we'll give it a class, and that will be a button success class. So that will make it green in color. So this is looking much better now. So the app is looking much more presentable. At least the pages are the same style as the rest of the application. And we can copy and paste this into the login page. And I will just change the class names for each of these divs. And we will also add a class of form control to each of these elements. And once again, we'll add a class to our button. So now our page is looking much better. So the sign in page is complete and the sign up page are both completed here. And you'll notice in the URL and on the top right, we refer to the action as sign in, but on our form we have it as login. So I'm just going to change that. And if we go to the sign up page, you will also see the same thing happen at the bottom. There's a login link, and we can actually change that one in the shared view under devise. So here is login. If we go into the shared view, we can modify that. So if we go under the shared folder, and then there's links partial. So you can see at the bottom, devise shared links. And in here there is some logic. The logic will basically say which links get added based on the controller name and the action name. So in this case, we'll change this to sign in. So the next step will be once a user signs into their account or once they sign up. Once they sign up for the first time, we want to take them to this plans page. And once they come to this plans page, they will choose a plan for their account. And it just means that at that point, once they've signed in for the first time, we will already get them on a plan and we'll know how many jobs that they can create, and we'll have their payment details and all of those things which are very important for this kind of application. So in order to do this, there is some code already written that can allow us to do this. So to make this work, we need to create a new controller. So we need to create a registrations controller and tell devise that we want to use that controller. So here is a code we can use to make that happen. So we have this action called after sign up path, and we're passing a custom path for redirecting that user once they have signed up for an account. So we have to save this as a registrations controller. So we'll do that now. We'll create a new controller here called registrations. We'll paste this code in, and I will add a different path for this redirect. So we'll call it plans path. So that's the one that we have set up in our routes file already. So we go back to our routes. You can see that. So we've got this plans path. So that's what we're using. So that will be called once the user has signed up. But in order to make that work, we do need to customize our routes. So this is if the user is inactive, if they need to be activated, but we're not doing that in this application. But we do need to add this to our routes. So we need to say that we are using this custom controller. So let's copy this last part. So in our routes now we will add this. So we've got the devise for accounts. We'll just paste this onto the end. So now let's go back and test this out to make sure that it's working. So first, let's restart our Rails application. So restart the Rails server. And we will go back to the sign up page in our browser. We'll fill out the information. And once we hit the submit button, we should see that we are redirected to our plans page. So that's what we are trying to achieve here. And okay, so it looks like I already have an email account set up. Maybe I tested this with the same email. I just want to try this once more. So change the email, we'll set the password. Let's hit submit, and it's working. So we're going straight to the sign up plan page. So choose the plan page. So that's perfect. So there is too much to cover in this one video, so we're going to leave it here. In the next video, we will begin by getting this plan page working so that once the user picks a plan, that we do register the information with Stripe and record it in the database also. So make sure you do check into the second video as you don't want to miss out on that part. I am planning to post all of the code for this tutorial online on GitHub, so I will share that with you guys in the link below also. So that's about it for this video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the part 1 of this series. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.